all of these teachers who are saying that the tribulation is going to start in September at the fourth blood moon, you see, I believe the rapture is going to happen in September.
Not this September necessarily.
Not this September.
No, no, no.
But I also believe that the Great Tribulation has to start in March and not September.
Oh, you believe that?
Yes. But which March? That's the question.
Yeah.
You know, because I said, you know, the September of 2015, it's either going to start in March of 15 or March of 16. And based on the beginning of the generation, 1948, I was seeing that it made sense that it would have been March of 2018. But I also said that if it's going to be, then before 2014 was over, we should have seen some catastrophic events happening. And they didn't happen, which started swinging me over to that the Great Tribulation would start in March of 2016, but 2015 would be an epic year of incredible events happening, leading us to the beginning of the Great Tribulation. Well, this is where I come back to this revelation. When I was looking at Amos, where it said, I will plant Israel in their own land, never again to be uprooted from the land I have given them. The Lord allowed me to see a connection. Israel was planted, the Jews were planted in their own land in 1948. That is true. What the Lord showed me opened my eyes to the fact that we very well may have been off in our calculation by 1 year. And what I'm going to show you right now is how we may have been off. I might not be right in this, but I feel strongly that I am right. When Israel was planted as a nation in 1948, never to be uprooted again, there's an analogy to planting a tree. When you plant a tree, and fruit trees seem to be even more fussy about being planted, is that you end up disturbing the roots, and when you put it in the ground, it kind of goes through a period of a shock. And it sets that tree back, and it takes a while before it kind of takes off and starts growing again. Well, Israel was planted as a nation in May of 1948. And as soon as the nation was planted, the enemy came in like a flood to try to uproot this nation before it would get established. And there was war. There was a shock coming into this fig tree because the enemies were literally trying to pull out the fig tree before it could get established when it was planted in 1948. And what ended up happening, this war, it looked like it was against all odds. Israel should have been destroyed. But instead of getting destroyed, Israel ended up taking in more land than what was going to be given to them under the initial agreement. And in fact, they literally made the enemies cry for peace. And in February 24th of 1949, there was an armistice signed. In fact, I actually pulled the documents for the signing of the armistice in February 24th, 1949. And this armistice went into effect, fully went into effect, March 23rd, 1949. Now, this armistice literally granted Israel the right to thrive. And the date, March 23rd, fully went into effect 3 days after the beginning of spring, 1949. So when we take a look at Matthew 24, at the prophecy, it says, learn the lesson from the fig tree. As soon as its twigs get tender and its leaves come out, you know summer is near. And then it goes on to say that that generation shall not pass away. Well, do you know what? Israel was planted in 1948. It went through a period of shock. And then it was given a peace to allow it to thrive. And it started to put forth new buds and new leaves in the spring of 1949. And when you take a look at, that was when Matthew 24 was fulfilled. When it started putting forth tender buds and new leaves and was allowed to grow as a nation. If you look at that date as 1949, then 70 years from 1949 is March of 2019. And if you understand that the rapture is going to happen in a September month, and if that year is 2019, then when you back up 3.5 years, for 3.5 years of what Daniel speaks of as war on the saints, for times, and half a time, and John the Revelator speaks of war on the saints for 42 months, then the beginning of that tribulation that will lead 3.5 years up to the time of the Lord's coming, that beginning would be the March of 2016. Now, when I started seeing this, all of a sudden, the dates of 2015 started making sense. Because it was like when I was thinking March of 2015 for the beginning of the tribulation, all of the events of the blood moons hadn't even happened yet. When you end up looking at 2016 March for the beginning of the Great Tribulation, then all of a sudden March of 2015 makes sense, because in March of 2015, March 20th, the judgment of the nations, and in fact, tomorrow we're going to go over the subject of earthquakes and what prophets have been saying, what David Wilkerson has been saying, and they're all tying it to the judgment of God. And March 20th is the judgment of God on the Gentile nations. And if you think about this, March of this year, the judgment of God on the Gentile nations, when we start looking at the depth of destruction that could come to America from these earthquakes, I believe that the window of the earthquakes could be between March 20th and no later than August, in order for there to be enough time for the destruction of our economy, the collapse of our stock market, that would lead into the fourth blood moon, to where we could literally be seeing the destruction of the economies of the nations.